and welcome back to another episode of Lost It Down, a member of the Bruiser Nation Podcast Network in a division of Snapmere Productions. David and I are running the ship for a little while here. Next 3 weeks or so, Steven's got his big wedding this next week, April 20th. Shock, shock. And that's going to be unbelievable. First of all, I can't wait to hear all about it. But that means you're going to be stuck with David and I for the short little future here. And I think we're pretty excited about it. We can hold it down. So, David, what's going on in your world right now? Are you ready for some Wally David time here for a few weeks?
I am ready. It's going to be great.
It is. Now, I know you're not a baseball fan, but this time of year right now, what are we doing? Is this all work-loaded right now, or are we keeping our eye on the NBA? What are we doing sport-wise?
Buddy, I'm in like a dead zone sport-wise, so... man, I haven't watched an ounce of NBA basketball this year, and I used to be like an avid NBA and college basketball, like watched a boatload of games. Haven't watched an ounce this year. I don't know. I can't tell you why. There's really no reason why. I think it's just because I'm not inspired by the NBA right now. And then you know my take on baseball. I gave up after 2017, I think was my last year watching baseball until, something gets fixed with top to bottom.
The Dolans sell the team or something like that to get you back.
Yeah, Dolans sell the team to somebody who likes to spend money. I might be right back into baseball, but I'm not going to get my hopes. It's like everything I watch. I'm not going to get my hopes up for something that I just it's not my favorite sport. So like I'm not going to do this to myself.
And if I was smart, I would have given up on baseball a while ago too. Yet somehow in my brain, I'm still like delusional. I'm like, one of these days, Pittsburgh native Mark Cuban's going to buy the Pirates, and I'm going to be so back in. They are back. 11-5. I mean, perhaps the best team in baseball. I don't know that people are talking. I'm talking. Penguins are not back though, David. I have to at least mention this.
What happened, dude? I was so hyped for them.
I was fired up too. So they went on a massive run. They won 7 out of 10 games, and the 3 losses were overtime losses. So they left 3 points on the table out of 20 possible. So that was like a really, really strong stretch that got me back in. If they win tonight, they are up 2-0 over the Predators. If they win tonight, they have a 43% chance to make the playoffs still. But it is no longer in your own control. And whenever I feel like you have to depend on other teams, you just like in your head, I don't have any positive thoughts. It's all, well, that team's for sure going to win out. Oh, they're desperate. They'll for sure win out. Not to mention in my head, I'm like, oh, well, this Penguins team's been blowing leads all year. They've looked terrible. Why do I have any belief they will win these last 2 games? It's a tough time to be a sports fan, David. I just had to vent a little bit for you to start us off.
Buddy, hit us with that right off the bat, the biggest news of the week.
Yeah, absolutely the biggest news of the week, and kind of an odd topic to talk about, but O.J. Simpson, one of the greatest football players, athletes of all time, terrible human being, passed away at the age of 76 from cancer. Felt like we just had to start with this. He, for better or worse, is a monumental part of pop culture, a monumental part of the history of the NFL, of college football, and also a terrible human being that took multiple people's lives in the prime of their own lives. So, David, I don't even know what to say here other than this happened. Take it what you want from it.
The only thing I have to really say is, I'm very surprised that OJ kept the cancer thing to himself. The guy normally would do anything to just be the star of the show. So I'm kind of surprised that we didn't know until it was too late. But other than that, you said it best all the way through.
I can't help. And I'm not one to, I don't go out of my way to, dance on people's graves. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I will say, though, I can't help but say that I've thought about Norm Macdonald a crazy amount this week since OJ passed away, given how hard he went in on OJ in his entire life. There's just been so many times I can hear in his cadence talking about OJ, and then, oh, wait, look here. It says he killed his wife? I can just hear Norm Macdonald making the jokes, and it's just a weird time. It was a weird day. You saw, what do you say about a guy that incredible Hall of Famer, just dog shit human being. But that's enough about O.J. Simpson, enough about the juice. Let's talk about some contract updates this week. Some big names having some extensions, another big name, future Hall of Famer, reworking their deal. We'll start in Jacksonville, where Josh Allen agreed to a big extension, 5 years, $150 million, with 88 of that million guaranteed. David, I'll set us up with this just because breakout seasons pay well. And Josh Allen had a very strong rookie campaign, 10.5 sacks. But since then, he's not had more than 7.5 sacks in a year until this year, where he threw up 17.5, and he looked like an elite edge rusher for realistically the first time in his career. And the Jaguars didn't waste any time and locked him up. Do you like the idea of paying a guy like this after one big year? Because it is an edge that, like, you can't replace edges that easily. Or are you a little bit more skeptical? I'm interested where you're at right now.
Man, this is tough because I think any year you could probably catch me like going back and forth on this, but I don't love the idea of paying a guy after the biggest season of his career, and it's been like 4 or 5 seasons in. It gives me like shades of Jadeveon Clowney vibes, and
Clowney's never had 10 sacks in a year. I'll at least say that. Devil's
true,
advocate.
True. It gives me those like, who was it? Paul Kruger with the Ravens after one big year, and the Browns signed him to not that big of a deal, but like a big deal, and he kind of disappeared off the face of the planet. Those are the ghost stories that like make me fearful of lack of consistency when you pay a guy. That being said, I think Josh Allen's a great overall player. To your point, it's not easy to replace edges, even like above average ones. So, I think it's a good move for the Jaguars. It plays into their future. I don't think it's a terrible move. It just, the amount of money gives me like heart palpitations if I'm a Jaguars fan. And maybe they love it. I don't know. I don't watch the Jaguars religiously, so I'm not going to sit here and say I know Josh Allen well, but those are my feelings.
One of those things, too, when you have a guy like this, is you see the flashes. And Josh Allen, even in those years where his stats weren't anything crazy, you saw those moments where you're like, oh, he's in there. And like even going back to that rookie year, he was a part of that. If I'm not mistaken, that was a Jacksonville team. Was that the one that beat Pittsburgh and ended up going to the AFC Championship game? Or if that was very soon after? Either way, at the very start of his career, you saw those moments and you thought you might have had one of those situations where you drafted the best player in the draft and it just so happened to be an edge. And the gap, yeah, I mean, they fell off a little bit the last few years. But I think overall, if you're a Jaguars fan, you got to take this gamble. If he does play like he did last year, it's like I said, it's a top 10 pass rusher in the NFL, 17.5 sacks. That's hard to replace. So hopefully for Jacksonville, they can keep that train going. Not to mention, sorry, last thing, I'm just looking. He's only missed 8 games in his entire career, and that was in 2020. All the other years.
That's impressive in its own right.
Yeah, and the fact that he's on the field, even when those like numbers were down, at least you know you're getting something there. He's not going to Chandler Jones
you. The one who came into the NFL with an injury too, or am I thinking of somebody else?
I want to say, well, this is a shot in the dark. I want to say you're thinking of the Florida edge that went to Jacksonville a couple of years before him, where he tore his ACL like right after the draft, like within a couple weeks. Oh my gosh! Now you're going to.
I think you're right. No, I think you're right. I don't think.
I know, but now you're killing me with the name because I know it's on the tip of my tongue. I want to say he was a Florida Gator, but I'll look back after the end of this. I'm going to do a little look back. It'll be like in PTI, you get errors, and then you'll be like, "Oh yeah, dumbass Wally remembers guy's name." But we'll go to the second one, and it's a little bit more close to home for you and fellow Browns fans. Nick Chubb and the Browns reworked the star running back's contract to keep him in Cleveland in 2024. It sounded like there was at least worries that with the big contract he is coming off of that massive knee injury, that they could be looking to move him and take the cap hit. Instead, the Browns legend, one of my favorite non-Raiders I can remember in my life, staying around at least one more year, David. You have to be fired up.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. The thing that concerns me is I don't think Chubb's going to be back until late in the season, to be honest. And I think people are looking at this as like a Cleveland's holding on to him, but what it really is Cleveland doesn't expect him back early, so they're going to take away some of his guarantees, and he has the ability to earn them back on the field. And that scares me a little because that speaks to me like he's not going to be back till mid to late season, and I just want to watch Nick Chubb run the football.
You know what? For people at home, I should set this up better than just saying you know how, but David is perhaps the biggest Adrian Peterson fan I've ever met in my life.
Facts.
From the days going back to, and David's a Texas Longhorn fan. I get it. Sometimes when you fall in love with a player, you just fall in love and there's just nothing you can do about it. Since the very beginning, David was this guy's number one fan. And in 2011, Adrian Peterson had a catastrophic knee injury. And he came back the following year in a shorter period of time from an ACL tear than basically anybody we've ever seen to this point. And what did he do that year? But come up like
yards, baby.
Yeah, about 10,
what was 15 it, like
yards
2,088 or something? Yeah, he came up 8 yards short, I believe. If I recall correctly, it was 8 yards short, and they pulled him out, I think, early in like 2 games that season. So he really should have gotten it, but, neither here nor there.
One of the best seasons we'd ever seen. And the whole reason I bring that up is because, first of all, that happened when Adrian Peterson was 27. Nick Chubb is 28. Difference I know is Nick Chubb has a couple more knee injuries there too. But Nick Chubb is seriously one of the most fun, most talented, most hardworking players I've ever seen. And football is better when he's better. And I just refuse to bet against this guy. You know he's busting his ass. And I don't care if he comes back in November or December. They're going to wait until he's healthy. And if he comes back healthy and the Browns are still in it in November, Thanksgiving, all of a sudden you're looking at one of the best running backs, in my opinion, I've ever seen. The last 25 years, at least top 5, top 6 running back. And you bring him back for the playoff push, that could be the recipe. If you're looking for a recipe, that could be it. And I love that they keep him around. Even if it goes wrong, I like that you bet on Nick Chubb.
Look at you gassing up the Browns over here.
I've never had a problem with the Browns. In fact,
I know.
I was going to say Nick Chubb is truly one of those guys that because I don't want to compare it to your love for Adrian Peterson because I didn't love him in college. I didn't think he was going to be good, frankly. I thought it was a bad pick for the Browns. But you just watch him and the way he runs. It's not only physical, it's angry. It's an angry runner. And
he never stops moving his feet, man. Never. It's like you just can't get him to the ground.
Well, who did you guys beat in the opening game last year? Because I want to say he had like a 40 or 50-yard run that was one of my favorite runs I'd ever seen. Because he not only was elusive, blew up a couple guys, but he stayed in bounds and cut up through the middle of the field and scored a touchdown. And it was just one of those, you feel like Nick Chubb could be having a special year coming, and then regrettably.
Was that Cincinnati or Pittsburgh? Is that Cincinnati? That had to have been
Cincinnati. You're right, was the opener. I think I'm thinking of a different game. It might have been the year before, because I'm thinking of like a sunny 1:00 game, going left to right, bottom of the screen. He comes up towards the middle of the field. Okay.
One of the best plays I've ever seen. Because his longest run last year of the 2 games he played was 20 yards. So it was the year before. But I think I know which run you're talking about.
We're rooting for Nick Chubb. That's the moral of the story. We're on Nick Chubb, and he's coming back better than ever. Write it down. We're feeling it.
All right, next up. Sorry, Wally, I got to interrupt you here. But DeForest Buckner signing a 2-year, $46 million extension with the Colts. Before I let you go, Wally, I have to say, I think DeForest Buckner might be the most underrated defensive player. Defensive line player in the NFL. Maybe not defensive player overall, but defensive line player in the NFL. Because I got to be honest, I watch, I don't know, let's say 50% of games every week, and I still forget that Buckner exists, and he has phenomenal years, year after year after year.
It helps that when I understand your point, because when you play for Indianapolis, a place that has just been written off defensively, going back to the Peyton Manning days, you always are just like assuming the Colts have a bottom 5-10 defense. What DeForest Buckner has done with Gus Bradley's defense in the middle of that, he's one of the best pocket pusher interior defensive linemen in the league right now. It kind of snuck up on me too. I was going through his stats today preparing. He had 52 sacks in the last 6 seasons from a defensive tackle slot, and he doesn't, to your point, get the pop that any of these other elite defensive tackles do. I know he struggles a little bit in the run. He's not elite there, but he's good enough. It's not like he's a problem in the inside against the run. What he can do pushing a pocket for you, it makes it so much easier to be a little bit more, I guess, go slower trying to go after an edge. Like maybe you don't go after him in the first round or something because you feel like you have an extra 4 sacks from an interior defender that you wouldn't have elsewhere. I think it's a great move for all parties involved, and he's still 30. I know that's like older, but you can still have a couple good years at 30. DeVonta Smith also gets in on the extension game. Just today, he signed a 3-year, $75 million extension with the Birds. $51 million of that is guaranteed. Get a load of this, Steven. I called you Steven because you're going to hear why in a second, David. My bad. The most receptions with 240 in most yards at 3,178 in Eagles history through their first 3 seasons. Yeah, the Eagles wide receivers are kind of like the Chicago Bears quarterbacks of that position group out in the East, but that's still damn impressive, man. And now he's locked up till he's 29. You just got to keep DeVonta Smith healthy. Do you like how aggressive Howie Roseman was here?
I think it's a good move. I'm looking up right now, which is why we took a long pause there. How long AJ Brown is signed for?
Because that's the best part. He just signed an extension, I want to say, last off season? Maybe the one before?
You're betting he expires in 2027. So and the reason I bring this all up, right, is because I think DeVonta Smith is a phenomenal number 2. That, again, probably gets not enough attention as a player overall. But I think if you give him a couple more years as a number 2, maybe he develops, maybe it's a great bet. But like right now, you're not losing out by paying him that money for 2 years while you still have AJ Brown, because you're going to have a dynamic duo with Jalen Hurts for that period, right? You might hate that contract, maybe, depending on how it's structured in 2028 if you don't keep a star wide receiver next to him. But who knows? I still think he's a great player. I'm not saying he can't be a number 1. I just don't look at him as a number 1 right now. So I don't think the contract is bad. I think it's a great contract for them.
One of the trickiest things when you have a wide receiver room as strong in Philadelphia is it is hard to see and hard to evaluate if he is a number 1. It reminds me of T. Higgins in Cincinnati, where, yeah, I believe he can be elsewhere, but while he has Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase playing opposite him, it's kind of hard to get a true evaluation of that player. But for what I think, it's the cliche that we're going to keep hearing forever, cap keeps going up. And with that being said, if you believe in Jalen Hurts, if you're trying to give him every opportunity he can to succeed, you keep the talent around him strong and you let him the opportunity to grow. One thing, here it is. The only risk I guess you would have to worry about is if Hunter Renfrow gets in there, where you know how the Raiders signed Hunter Renfrow to a little bit of an extension and it looked really good at the time. Yeah, it was a little early. You take a risk, and if it doesn't work, honestly, it's not that big of a hit. The dead cap's not going to hurt you that bad. Overall, I think it's a great move, and I love what Howie's been doing, attacking these rookie deals at the end of it instead of letting it play out where all of a sudden now you're paying top dollar and the market goes up every single year. Might as well get ahead of it, and I've loved what he's been doing. Before I send us into Abby Turner and our ad read there, I had to point out I found out our defensive end from Florida. Jaguars drafted Dante Fowler, number 3 in 2015. He had his ACL torn and missed his rookie year. So we just missed it by 3 years, I believe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty good. I'm just saying, we're locked in. We're right there,
Yeah.
David. We're right
Yeah.
there.
I mean,
Got to
come on.
pat yourself on the back a little bit. Come on.
At least I knew it was a Jaguars linebacker.
See, we got there. We got there in the end. We want to remind you guys, though, that this week's show is brought to you by Abby Turner Creative, your one-stop shop marketing agency specializing in branding, high-end photography, fashion, and more, especially if you are around our age where there's college graduations, engagements, Steven's fucking wedding, baby pictures, you name it. Feels like they're happening every weekend. Abby Turner Creative is the only way to go. Check her out for yourself at abbyturnerphoto.com. That's Abby, A-B-B-E-Y, or on her Instagram page at Sawdad and Sapphire. Again, that is abbyturnerphoto.com. Fired up to finally meet her in the flesh this week. And we're going to have her picking for the Bills in a couple weeks here as well in our mock draft. We'll be talking more about that at the end of the show. We're excited to have her on once again for the Bills pick. By the way, she drilled the DeJuan Jones pick last year. Bills probably should have listened. Brazil, though. Brazil is not getting the Cleveland Browns like we all had thought up to this point. It's a shame we don't have Steven here because it's his Green Bay Packers facing the Philadelphia Eagles in Sao Paulo. I have to ask you, because with all that buzz about the Browns, are you happy or disappointed that you are not going to see your team go to Brazil?
I gotta be honest. I'm a little happy because I don't like the Browns being the first of something feels like a disaster waiting to happen. I just a Cleveland thing, you know. I don't know.
Like the plane gets lost and they live in the mountains for like 4 years.
Or just Bottlegate, but in Brazil. Just something horrific, just that tarnishes the name of the team again. To be honest, though, Eagles Packers is like a perfect matchup for Brazil. I mean, both teams are going to travel well, and I just think those two fan bases are probably a really good pairing for the first time in another country.
The Packers are just like a global brand too. If you're getting into football, you know about the Cheeseheads, you know about the Green Bay Packers, so that made sense. The Browns have such a great following too. It would have been a lot of fun. I was trying to put myself in to your both of your guys' shoes and try to think what I would like if the Raiders were doing that. And I think it's one of those things that on that Friday of the game, you'll be disappointed that they're not playing. But once Sunday gets there, you're like, that was fun, but at least they're here. We don't have to worry about all that travel, that garbage to start the year. Let's just have a routine, a normal kind of schedule, and go get a win. No funny business. So I can see both sides, I suppose. Helmet talk, baby. It's one of my favorite things on this show. I love uniform talk. And now the NFL is allowing a third helmet design for NFL teams. And David, I'm going to tell you the good and bad with this. Because this is unbelievable for teams that actually have throwbacks. It makes sense to have a third throwback thrown in there. What this sucks is we're going to start seeing these obscure, never before used helmets for no reason whatsoever, where they're going to just be brutally. Remember the MLB Future jerseys in the late 90s where it was like, we're going to show you what uniforms are going to look like in the 2000s. And they're like a complete abomination and eyesore. I'd still get the Pirates one if I could find it. It's freaking, come on. But I just feel like it's good until it isn't. Sometimes oversaturating something sucks.
I agree, but here's my counterpoint. And maybe it's not so much a point. I don't understand why we have to restrict the amount of jerseys teams have or combinations teams have. And maybe I'm dumb and don't see the bigger picture, but my thing is if your team can go out and generate revenue by doing
the Oregon Ducks thing, you're saying?
Yeah, the Oregon Ducks thing, right? Like you're coming out with fire jerseys, and even if you spend a lot of money with Nike to make it happen, right? Or whoever you use, I just don't understand why we limit that as long as we still keep the whole idea of, aways are this general color and homes are this general color, right? Like, don't be the same fucking color. Like, I just don't understand why we limit jerseys. I'd rather see and there are teams that would do it, like the Seahawks would probably have 30
and they'd
different
be
jersey
great
combos.
too.
Yeah, and 90% of them would be phenomenal. And then there would be teams like Cincinnati or Cleveland who just don't have a whole lot to work with color wise and would have maybe 5 or 6, right? But I don't know. I like it. I want more
Creativity.
throwbacks and I want more creativity. I just don't understand why the NFL goes, no, you're only allowed to have 3 helmets now.
The helmets,
yada,
I
yada.
guess, I can at least try to rationalize because they've been hammering the whole it's a safety issue thing. Make sure that you have a helmet that you're actually using so that it's ready to be used when you get decked. So I can hear that. The hard shell, the one for the longest time, now we had 2 that last 2 years, and all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, people really like new uniforms. We're going to go to 3. The uniform part, the actual jerseys and pants themselves, I'm with you. If you want to wear whatever you freaking want to wear each week, why do we care? If anything, you would think they're selling more. And you're
Right.
still going to have the teams like the Cowboys and the Raiders, the Steelers, who are like, screw it, we're going to wear the traditional stuff all the time. Great. That's
Right.
not for them. It's for the Seahawks. That's for the...
And those teams might go to throwbacks more, and that's fine. And none of these teams are going to have 30 actual jerseys in a season. They're going to try something out. It's not going to sell well. Nobody's going to like it, and then they'll move on to the next one. And like they'll find something that just hits hard that they'll keep coming back to, and that's okay. I just, like we said, I don't understand restriction on the jersey and whatnot.
I think we actually talked about this last offseason, so if I'm going down memory lane, I apologize to everybody. Imagine the Minnesota Vikings helmet, right? Go all white with the purple horn instead for like a whiteout road jersey. I've been just like fixated on that for a long time now. And just like, what if we're allowed to do these extra ones, we're going to get all these goofy, we got orange Chicago Bears helmets. Then why can't we get cool things like that, Minnesota? Now you're going vegan.
Minnesota
going vegan.
is, just so we're clear, just like I told you off pod, Minnesota is trading Justin Jefferson away from the trifecta of franchise killing, which is get rid of your franchise quarterback, make your stadium unfun, and then get rid of your last fun player and see what happens. For all those who don't know, Minnesota committed to having only vegan food in their football stadium going forward, which I don't care, but like, why?
Yeah, so now you get to eat your $50 vegan burger while watching the Minnesota Vikings trot out Sam Darnold at starting quarterback. Have a good one. Have your $14 beer as well. It's great. Good Lord. But in the same vein as helmets, uniforms, baby. And we're at that weird time of year where you have to kind of announce it because another stupid thing, there's rules that if you don't have your uniform announced by a certain time, you're not allowed to use it the next year. So we have now been told that the Jags are going to wear a throwback uniform this next year. Thank God it's back. Their best uniform in franchise history. And then the Jets, they unveiled new uniforms apparently, David. Tell me I'm not crazy. Were those not the exact same uniforms we'd already seen?
Somebody's got to show me like live side by sides, but yeah, I agree.
It's the Pam from The Office. It's the same picture. Like if you showed me last year's jerseys and what this new one, great hype video, by the way. I was hyped up for the same jerseys again, but it's the exact same picture.
It's like the year that the Browns shifted the color. It's all the logo color that everyone thought was going to be a sweet new jersey or a sweet new logo.
I'm glad that you brought up the Browns though, because the Jets brought back the white face mask. And on the Jets, I think it's a slick look. It's one of the hottest looks in football. The Browns have gone through 3 different face mask colors in the last 20 years with white, gray, and brown. So I was just curious because I feel like it's very entrenched one side or the other in Browns lore. Are you pro white face mask or are you give me gray, give me brown?
Give me the whites. The whites are what
Oh,
was it the 70s?
Brian Sipe, Bernie Kosar,
Yeah,
Cardiac
the whites
Cats.
Yeah, the cardiac kids are.
Cardiac Kids. Jesus, apologies. God,
the
Browns
cardiac
fans are going to
kids
kill me.
are the white face mask generation. So I think that's the generation I think of most when I think Browns jerseys. So I'm white face mask all day long.
I would not only completely agree with that, I think that it's absurd that we're now in the year of our Lord 2024 and the Browns haven't just made it so their home jerseys are always brown on top, orange on bottom. It's one of, you know how hard it is to have orange and brown as your color scheme and to have uniform slap. And what the Cleveland Browns can do with that brown on orange, to me, it's as classic as almost all those other. When you think classic NFL jerseys, you think of Green Bay, you think of Pittsburgh, Dallas, Oakland, now Vegas. You think of the Cleveland Browns. Like that, they are classic. Where are the classics? Where are the hits, baby? Just where are the hits?
Retweet.
But that will bring us to the end of another episode of Lost It Down. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Lost It Down, and retweet us on Twitter at @down_loss. Remember that this episode was brought to you by Abby Turner Creative. And David, that leads us into the end of the show. Couple quick things before I throw it to you and get your final thoughts. One, we love you, Steven. Congratulations. Awesome week for you. We're so excited for you and can't wait to hear about it. As for you listening at home, we have the mock draft coming up. If you guys are familiar with what we did last year, we take fans of teams and we let you do the drafting for your team for the whole first round. We're going to be sending out the text. If you've been sending your request to be a part of this, I will be in contact with you this week and we will be going from there. A big couple shows coming up this next couple weeks. You're going to be wanting to tune in. But David, that leads us to the end of the show. Anything going on in your world, buddy?
Oh boy. No.
How's that?
Nothing.
I was going to say, new job for people at home. David's been busting his ass over there. How's life going out there in the Claiborne auto world?
It's good, man. Taking information through a fire hose still will be for quite some time, but I don't know. I'm having fun. I enjoy what I do. It's just I'm busy a lot.
That's a good and bad thing. Just take.
You have to enjoy
breaths.
it if you're going to be
exactly.
That busy. Let's put it that way.
And I'm sure you do. There's something about probably having your name on something too that adds an element of pride and passion to it.
Facts.
Well, we love you guys. Like I said, mock drafts coming out. Keep your ears peeled, your eyes peeled, ears peeled. You know, I can't talk. This is what we do. It's end of a 30-minute pod. Get used to it. After the draft, we're probably going to go to every other week as well. But otherwise, I think that's all the housekeeping we have. Go Penguins. Hopefully next week I'm talking to you guys. We're in the playoffs. Pirates are going to be like 17-5 by that point. Greatest time to be a Pittsburgh Sports fan, potentially, unless you're a Steelers fan. Love you guys.